So my way of thinking, I didn't know it was odd or unorthodox until I really started talking with a lot of intelligent people in my teenage years, and kind of describing the way that my brain functioned, the way I looked at things, and experiences I had had. And I'm not trying to say that I'm some woke genius, because that's clearly not the case, but just trying to preface this by saying that I've always tried to marry both rationalism and empiricism, which are two kind of conflicting viewpoints, though they shouldn't be. I don't believe they should be. But typically, people kind of fall into one or two camps, right? You get the liberal arts types of people, the people that are by feel, intuition, what they can feel with their senses, they see around them, and they deduce through things that are not necessarily provable by a scientific or mathematical model. There's no law of physics they can defer to answer their questions. That doesn't necessarily mean that the answers are untrue that they arrive at, though. In terms of the rationalist, they are using and consulting with things that can be modeled, right? Numbers, physics, natural laws, things that can be defined, things that can be measured and repeated in studies. And the fact that my father is that. He's a scientist, he was a geologist. My mother's a lawyer who had a liberal arts degree, so they're very opposite, and I've always felt like about 50-50 of each genre, of each person, each type of person. But as I grew up, I seemed to notice that most people fell into one or two camps. At least, like, their overall distribution was skewed to one side. I mean, no one is 100%. Just like when you think of things like sexuality, many people will accept that it's a spectrum for many people, though there are people that happen to be on the ends of that spectrum, aka 100% gay, 100% straight, whatever, right? But again, putting a percentage to something like sexuality is not really possible, so we get to these kind of elusive concepts that are hard to pin down. What I was thinking about today was horoscopes, zodiac signs, astrology. I mean, it's total fucking horseshit, right? But is it so stupid to think that it's possible that there is something that could alter or influence a child and then their personality based on the month that they were born in? I can think of many examples, and I'll give you two. I'll give you two that I think are very important because they're new in regards to science. Fairly new, right? Epigenetics. With all the studies they're doing with the genome projects, the CRISPR projects, mapping the genome, gene therapy, figuring out where diseases come from, figuring out how to fix these things, and understanding our biological history and influences and epigenetics specifically, we understand now that one of the most common things, and I believe this is actually where they derived this understanding from, or tried to prove it initially, like the thesis came from this, but I could be wrong, was that mothers who were stressed during pregnancy, their children tended to have higher incidences of anxiety disorders, to both the probability of developing an anxiety disorder and higher degree of anxiety. And that's, in my opinion, it's very logical, right? I don't think that's hard to conceptualize. And if we take that one step forward, okay, well, your personality is going to be influenced in a way that is congruent with another group of people that were born in the same time frame as you. So could that downstream 50 trillion billion n to the 97 quadrillion variables down the road, could that mean that some person writing a column in a shitty New York apartment about how you're gonna find luck soon or whatever is legitimate? No, I mean, that's dubious at best, and it's because they're using known performative methods. Sociologists have known this for years, that when you want to appeal to cognitive bias, you use very vague statements that essentially anyone will relate to. And even if you're wrong, people will tend to ignore the ones that they didn't resonate with, and then exaggerate the effect of the ones that they do, which is confirmation bias, right? So that's clearly horseshit, but I said I'd give you two examples. The second one, I have never read about this. This is just a theory of mine that popped in my head when I was taking a shower, right? Shower thoughts. But what about... I have a very very long, complicated history with my autoimmune system, right? But what if a child is born, or many children, over a large population sample size, are born during hay fever month, or when the grass and the pollen is at its worst? Let's say I don't know what month it is. I guess it depends on the area, the climate. But what the effect of that is, I mean, their immune systems are functioning for the first time out of the womb. Like, they're functioning on their own. They're operating independently, and they're configuring themselves. They're tabulating things. They're collecting data. They're sensing this pathogen and this piece of dust and detritus, and saying, oh no, we don't need to react to this, but this we need to swell up and let this not get into the cells and expel it through the sweat glands or whatever. It's creating these processes. So again, especially if you're localized to a geographical area, if you had a bunch of children that were born in a month that had lots of pollen and common markers for... Sorry, so if you have a bunch of children, especially in a confined geographical region, then all get born in the same month when it's high allergy season, versus another population that's born in a very sterile and disaffective environment. Their immune systems are going to be calibrated differently, because it's their first months outside of the womb, and that's a very formative and important time in the human life. So it's not that the search for meaning in birthdays having an effect on people is wrong. It's that they're looking at the wrong outcome. They should be looking at physiological differences, not these kind of very downstream, impossible to measure kinds of personality quirks, because it's just too impossible to model, and there's too many iterations of chance and binary breaks in probability curves every planche second for you to ever figure out how to map it or factor it into an equation. But the point is, like, this is a metaphor, right? I don't give a fuck about astrology, and astrology is just bullshit anyways, like the way it's done, but you'll never discover or uncover anything unexpected if you don't try to marry these two different styles of thinking. You need to be an empiricist and a rationalist. And I think some of the greatest outcomes or pioneering moments or inventions, innovations, new ways of doing things, they occur when someone who's an expert in two fields that have never been married before combine them to a new discovery in ways that nobody ever thought. And the example I have on my head is John Forbes Nash. This is Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. the guy was a mathematician who invented game theory, and then he unfortunately went schizophrenic. But the way he had his big epiphany was he was in a bar, and he was with his friends, and there was one girl who was gorgeous, beautiful, just exquisite, and they all wanted to compete to get this girl's affection and take her home. But there was a bunch of other girls, enough girls for all of them, that were ostensibly still attractive, but less attractive. And he realized, oh, if we all go for the one girl that's beautiful, our probability of success is very low. So we must do what's best for the group, and we all go for the less attractive girls, and then we all get laid, right? So all he's doing there is he's adapting mathematical models to sociology, right? Nobody had done that before, at least not in a meaningful sense. And game theory, game theory is kind of a synonym for just strategy. It depends how deeply you go into it, but everyone has done game theory, whether they realize it or not. Game theory, it can be a metagame. Whenever you're talking with somebody, you're really having at least two conversations, right? There's the conversation that comes out verbally, and then there's the thoughts behind it, the intentions, and there might be a tertiary conversation, which is planning out contingencies and wondering about the optimal thing to say, and thinking 5 steps ahead, and what to answer for this, and what to answer for this, and should I say that, and would this be compromising my beliefs if I don't speak up? And people are complicated. So everyone is a rationalist and an empiricist, but they don't realize it and they don't apply it properly. And I think it's a waste. I think people aren't thinking as openly as they should. And I think if they did, people would get along a lot better. But all those moments in time where two ostensibly or apparently diametrically opposed or conflicting or unrelated ideas come together to formulate some new invention or a new brew, that'll occur in everybody if everybody has this thought process, right? Think of how many beautiful and amazing things we'll bring into the world. It's just a thought. Very high on marijuana, had an edible. Don't know how coherent this was, but I just kind of wanted to speak. Something I'm trying to do now. What's the worst that could happen, right?